Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Southminster Steinhauer United Church, where we're spiritual seekers, united in community. And we're gathered in person and online on this final Sunday in the month of May. We take time to reflect on our lives, how we want to be in the world, in its trouble and in its beauty, how we want to be in this breath, in this moment, in its joy and in its sadness. So whoever we are, however we are, wherever we are, whatever we're hoping for, whatever we're carrying, whatever we're celebrating, whatever we fear, whatever we dare to dream, we're with one another to ground in wisdom, to deepen our connection and our capacity to live in ways that are more faithful to truth and humility and respect and integrity and dignity, acceptance, and of course, love. We're continuing our series, Finding Our Way Home, and we've traveled the rivers and the stars and the forest, and today we make our way across the fields. We take our place in the long story of life, the long story of land. We begin by honoring the legacy of the land wherever we find ourselves. Whether you're at home, or you're here in this gathered community, or you're traveling, let's take a moment to be present to the land where we are that has witnessed such deep beauty and endured such great pain. And we recognize the first peoples of the land we each call home, and here in the SSUC communities in Edmonton and Saskatoon, we respectfully acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory, ancient lands of the Cree and Métis people, and traveling route to many Indigenous peoples of various tribes and nations. As we seek a way through the stain and the pain of racist policies and practices, through the legacy of harm that remains with us all, Indigenous, settlers, refugees, we acknowledge our commitment to make a new and better path with one another that's characterized by respect and attention to equity. So we sing our way amid our lostness and foundness. We sing our way to better words, better ways.
Provide you only hands to find.
As we light our candle here in this community, we invite those of you who are joining us online to light a candle in your space as we together seek to lighten our darkness. Our life is possible because we're on the sweet spot in the galaxy, the Goldilocks. Not too close, not too far from our nearest star. As we light our candle here and you light yours at home, we welcome the light of a new day, the lengthening light in our hemisphere, the light on which our very life depends. We're not only born into light each day, but we're born to be light each day, to bring the light of kindness and compassion in the words we speak and in the actions we undertake this day. And we bring the curve of our hearts to strengthen our intention as to how we seek to live with one another. And so, as we do each time we gather, we find whatever words, never enough, never able to express it all, but some words to honor our intention for how we would be in the world. And so I invite us to pray with one another. We pause once again to get our bearings as we receive the miracle of our greening world and the budding beauty of this season. We are in awe of the resilience of life. As we face inexplicable acts of violence, we are stunned with grief amid the pain of life. In our disorientation, we stumble together toward a horizon where hope shines through the distance. May we live with hearts broken open to the pain and joy of our shared humanity. As those who share a common journey, may we find our way together. Amen. Hey, welcome. Oilers go. Thanks for coming to the carpet. With you today, it's a story. It's a story that tells a very long old tell to one another in ways. I'm going to find another microphone that gives us more than every other word. And we're going to share some pictures together that are up on the screen behind me. I think that's the biggest place to find them. Sometimes when we get lost in life, it helps to remember how we got here, where we came from. So that's what this story is, our family tree. All of us are part of an old family. And the roots of our family tree reach way back to the very beginning of life on Earth. We've changed a lot since then. When we began, we didn't look like people. We didn't have 2 eyes to blink. We didn't have 10 toes to wiggle. We were just these tiny, round cells in the deep, dark sea. And on the outside, we were so small we were almost invisible. But on the inside, we had the same kind of spiraling genetic code for life that we have today. And that's the way our family stayed for generations and generations, year after year, for millions of years. Tiny and round and just floating in the sea. But then Earth changed. Land rose from the oceans, the air filled with oxygen. Life changed too. Slowly, slowly, one step at a time, some cells joined together and became plants. Our cells joined together and we became animals. On the outside, we were squishy and soft, kind of like worms. On the inside, our cells had many shapes. Square like boxes, pointy like stars, round with ripe seeds, kind of like the same way they do now. See his. And as the sea rose and fell, our family changed again. On the outside, we had scales to protect us and fins, 2 on each side, to swim against the strong currents. And on the inside, we had spiny backbones that helped us move just as freely as we do today. When families of green plants and insects began living on the land, we followed them. On the outside, we still had scales, but we looked like huge salamanders. We crawled out of the sea on legs, 2 on each side. We didn't go very far, and we returned to the water to lay our eggs. On the inside, we had lungs to breathe oxygen just like we do now. And as all of the continents on Earth slowly joined into one, we left the water completely. Look at us now. On the outside, we looked like hairy lizards. We hunted all day, had really sharp teeth to tear our food, and on the inside, our blood ran warm, almost as warm as it does today. In one of Earth's dark times, nearly all life went extinct. But many families survived. Ours was among them. Now, on the outside, we were small and furry. We hid or slept during the day, and we scurried about at night. And on the inside, we made milk for our babies just like we do now. After an asteroid shattered the calm and a layer of fine dust settled on everything, we changed again. Ooh, look at us now. On the outside, we looked more and more like we do now. But we still walked on all fours. We climbed tree trunks with our thumbs and our thumbnails, our toes and our toenails. On the inside, the bones of our hands looked almost the same as they do today. And after the earth cooled and the forests shrank, we left the trees to live in the open grasslands, just like the elephants. On the outside, we walked upright on two legs, with our two arms free for using tools. On the inside, we had large brains, but not quite as big as they are now. Today, it's a long, long time from when our family started. Slowly, slowly, one step at a time, we've changed. On the outside, we're all people, from the size of our heads to the shape of our toes. On the inside, we're all people with big brains that wonder who we are and where we came from and where we're going next. We began as these tiny round cells, and we've sure changed a lot since then. But we carry with us reminders of each step of our past, because that's how it is with families. And ours goes back a long, long way. I think you're going to have a wonderful morning exploring some other parts of our family tree today with Daisy and Ariane, having some time inside and some time outside. So I hope you have a wonderful program, and thanks for coming and sharing our story about our family tree, all of us from the same family. So have a wonderful morning, and we'll see you at the end of your time together. And we're going to sing with one another. our gratitude to Curtis Tufts for those wonderful words to a familiar Scottish melody. I want to share an excerpt from the poem, Have You Ever Tried to Enter the Long Black Branches? A poem by Mary Oliver. And we hear a piece of the poem that begins, Who can open the door who does not reach for the latch? Who can travel the miles who does not put one foot in front of the other, all attentive to what presents itself continually? Who will behold the inner chamber? Who's not observed with admiration, even with rapture, the outer stone? Well, there's time left. Fields everywhere invite you into them. And who will care? Who will chide you if you wander away from wherever you are to look for your soul? Quickly then, get up, put on your coat, leave your desk. To put one foot in the door of the grass, which is the mystery, which is death as well as life, and not be afraid. To set one's foot in the door of death and be overcome with amazement. To sit down in front of the weeds and imagine God the 10-fingered sailing out of the house of straw, nodding this way and that way to the flowers of this present hour, to the song falling out of the mockingbird's pink mouth, to the tippets of the honeysuckle that have opened in the night. To sit down like a weed among weeds and rustle in the wind. Listen, are you breathing just a little and calling it a life? While the soul, after all, is only a window. And the opening of the window, no more difficult than the waking from a little sleep.
Joy and pain of living.
I have an uneasy relationship with the prairie. Sometimes the open fields and the endless sky and the immeasurable unbroken distance can feel disorienting and lonely to me, even after all these years that it has been home for me. And I so vividly remember arriving here, driving from graduate school in Southern California to a summer job in Calgary, making my way north through the deserts of Nevada and Utah, into the prairie expanse of Montana and southern Alberta. This land looked so empty and endless to my maritime eyes. Where are the trees? Where was the water? How could these dusty fields produce anything we could actually eat? And what's with all this sky? Where do the cows even begin to find shade? And suddenly, out of nowhere, first grain elevators, then skyscrapers appeared on the horizon, and I could see a city emerging from these plains. And then where did it go? Wasn't I almost there? And it couldn't be just around the next corner, because there are no corners here. Just this intensely wide open space where earth and sky never quite seem to meet. Where it's the land that's wide, not the water. Over the years, I became oriented to life in the foothills. I could always get my bearings once my inner compass adjusted to the fact that the mountains were in the west instead of in the north, as they were in Pasadena. But it took me a long time to even begin to feel at home on the prairie. A couple in my Calgary congregation got a new painting they were very excited to show me. And I remember standing in their living room with my back to the windows that looked west onto this stunning view of the mountains. But we were looking east on the east wall in their living room where they had put this new painting. I remember it was very wide and not very deep. And 4/5 of it was sky. And then there was this squat little bit of field stretching across the bottom. And there were a few tiny square hay bales, which, even though they were stacked on top of each other, they still barely registered on my eye. And I just didn't get it. I couldn't understand their love of this landscape. It all seemed so disproportionate to me. And my need of symmetry just didn't get this lack of balance between earth and sky. Until several years later, as I was driving across the prairie to Winnipeg, I suddenly realized how my eyes had finally opened to the big sky and the wide land, and how the prairie had taken up an uneasy residence in me. How these open plains had changed me, and how little by little I'd been opened by this land and by the experiences that I'd had on it. And in some ways, My relationship with the prairie mirrors the spiritual journey I've made on this land, and we all make in our lives. It's that unending circle of being oriented and then being disoriented and then being reoriented. An endless process in our lives if we'll allow ourselves to be opened by our land, by our life, by who we are and what we love, and by who and what we struggle to love. The poet's invitation on behalf of the fields has been compelling to me this week. Fields everywhere invite you into them. And who will chide you if you wander away from wherever you are? To look for your soul. As the fields and cities and schools and hospitals of the breadbasket of Europe continue to be devastated and its peoples displaced with so much death and destruction. As yet, another classroom has become a killing field for children targeted by derangement and aided and abetted by a gun-loving culture. Fields of open sky and open land invite us to look for our soul. Perhaps because to look in the field is where we have the best chance to find ourselves again. In the wide places, in the open spaces, on the soft ground, on the common ground of heartbreak and hope, to find the treasure that's hidden there. Among the parables that Jesus told, there is a story, a very short little vignette, a story of how the community we long for, the world as we wish it was, the kingdom of God or the beloved community, the commonwealth of heaven, call it what you will. It's like treasure hidden in a field, which someone found and hid again, until with great joy, they managed to sell everything they had to buy the field. Sometimes as we make our way across a field that has invited us in, we find something we didn't know we were looking for. And that treasure might not be jewels or gold or silver or a stash of money. It might not be a fossil or a piece of history. It just might be something that we would have easily missed. A flower opening against all odds, a feather that fell into our path, a moment of noticing how much life there is in a square inch of a field. How many tiny beings are busy with being, crawling, buzzing, hissing. Or the treasure that we stub our toe against might be any number of possible stones that just cause us to pause and notice what's breaking through the hard ground. What is finding a way to break ground, break open, take its tiny place in the expanse of the field? When we find ourselves in the hallways of hate or the supermarket aisles of supremacy or the deep canyons of sadness or the dense bush of despair. Fields everywhere invite us in. Invite us into their openness, their vulnerability, their potential, their generativity. Invite us beyond the hard ground that gets packed by our opinions and our fears. Fields everywhere invite us to the softened ground that's receptive to the seeds that can be cultivated and the weeds that will grow wild. And where the long, wide view of the field can entice us back to our soul, to the place where we're at home with ourselves. In the field, there's not many places to hide. We're exposed to the elements, to the heat of the sun, the force of the wind, the gentle and the torrential rain, the cold of the winter. If we wander in the fields to look for our soul, we'll expose ourselves to all the elements of life, to the heartache and the heartbreak of cruelty, to the overwhelming joy and pain of living, to the wide, unprotected expanse of the heart, where the treasure of being fully alive awaits our joy. In these times when there is so much to contort our compassion into cynicism, and so much to shrink the horizon of our hope with despair, when there is so much to diminish our capacity to trust in the goodness of life and to resist the evils of the isms that distort our humanity, fields everywhere invite us in. Invite us to wander our way into wonder, to learn how to keep planting these values, not for ourselves alone, but for the generations that will come after us. Fields everywhere invite us in to respect the wildness that needs our witness, not our domination. There are some very thorny fields that dominate our culture. Those places where we have lost our soul. Fields like individualism, and competition, and capitalism, and consumerism, globalization. But before and beyond these fields lies the wide, open, unbroken, wild field that invites us to enter and find our soul, invites us to wander and search for treasure, to search for ourselves and each other, invites us to find our way home, to where the open field and the big sky help us open our hearts to the wide expanse of unsheltered living. No one will stand in our way if we wander away from wherever we are to look for our soul. May we find the courage to do just that. And thank you to Pam and Janet for that. That piece was called Fields. It's based on a poem by James Stephens, and the music is that of Mary Donnelly and George Strid, and we got to do a bit of wandering through the fields. Thank you both. As a community, we celebrate together and we grieve together. And today we grieve the death of Al Craig, and we celebrate his amazing life as a husband and father and grandfather, a beloved member of this community, senior civil servant who served this province well, an avid golfer, and a lover of music. He placed his voice with the men's chorus here and also the Silvertones Choir. He was a fun maker and an amazing, remarkable man. He served on our refugee support team as we welcomed a young couple from Ethiopia a number of years ago, and Al has provided such support to this community over the many years that they've been a part of it, also serving as a trustee of our congregation in a point in time in our life together. We honor Al's life. We will gather at some point when it's good for his family and good for our community to come together and celebrate his life in a service with one another. But until then, we want to sing the words we share at the close of every celebration of life gathering as we honor the light that Al has placed among us, and we sing how it is safely held now and always in the light of love. So we take a moment to honor Al's light, and we sing with one another. We are also celebrating the life of Dolores Wyatt this coming Saturday, joining with her family here Dolores died in January, and this is the first opportunity that her family, scattered from various parts of Alberta and BC, are able to come together to celebrate her life. And you are welcome to join her family here on Saturday at 11 o'clock. We also have an opportunity, particularly for those of you who are joining us online, who might like to engage in a time of conversation with one another, an opportunity to connect on Zoom, to share and go a little deeper around the theme that we've been exploring today, finding our way across the fields. The link is there on the screen, and you can find your way via our website. Deep gratitude for the support that so many of you provide regularly or occasionally from time to time with our community, that allow us to do the work we do with one another in our community and around the world. We thank you for your gifts and remind you of a few ways that you can offer your financial donations. There is a box at the back, and there will also be an opportunity to purchase grocery cards in the foyer this morning. You can help us in that way as well. As we take our leave of this circle, we remind ourselves of the values that we share with our sister community in Saskatoon, the former Meewasin Valley United Church, now SSUC Saskatoon, who've given us these amazing words that we keep before us on our wall in our collective space. The values of justice, respect, passion, balance, courage, integrity, creativity, gratitude, inclusivity, spirituality, compassion, responsibility, open-mindedness, continuous learning, and joy. And of course, they all add up to love. We sing these values inspired by this part of our family, set to music and words by my teammate Christopher New, who's enjoying some sabbatical time from now until the beginning of August. So we sing our commitment to live these values.
To thrive amid our world's variety.
We go in the strength of who we are together. We go to give our light to the world. We go to find light in fields everywhere that invite us into them. We go in peace and grace and strength and hope.